Good morning, everyone. Are we all excited to be here at this Women's Forum? I can't hear you. Little bit better. One more time. Okay, thank you. So as you can see, we have an extremely distinguished panel here. And in no particular order, we will be introducing them to you one by one. And we may ask one or two questions here from the stage. And after that, we'll open it out to all of you so that you have a chance to ask your questions. And I should tell you the theme today is women's empowerment and how they overcome various obstacles to be what they are today, and their struggles and travails along the way. So, in no particular, let me introduce my co-moderator here, the very lovely Dr. Mamta Singhvi. Dr. Mamta, you are a nephrologist? Radiation oncologist, okay. And of course, we have our esteemed president here, Dr. Anjana Samadar. Thank you all for joining us on the stage today. And shall we start the show, Anjana? What do you think? We'll start it. Okay, on with the show. And as I said, we will start, I think, with our lovely correspondent, Mrs. Yoshita Singh. Yoshita is the chief correspondent from Press Trust of India to the United Nations. I'm going to give the mic to Yoshita, and she's going to tell you all about herself. Yoshita?
Thank you, Dr. Bhavani, Dr. Anjana. Thank you, API, for inviting me here today. It's really an honor to be among such esteemed guests, physicians, and thank you for all the work that you do. It's also an honor to be on this panel with such renowned and esteemed guests and trailblazers. My name is Yoshita Singh. I am the Chief United Nations and New York correspondent for Press Trust of India, PTI, which is India's largest newswire. And I cover the UN and New York area for it. I'm the only one for PTI here, so I really have to cover a lot. My work encompasses a lot of news about India's standing in the UN, India's role in the UN, contribution, the achievements and contribution of the Indian diaspora across the New York area. And of course, I report a lot about your accomplishments as well. Just a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Lucknow, and I've been in the US since 2008, lived in Chicago and Boston, and almost now 13 years in New York. But home is always Lucknow, home is always in India, and it's wonderful to be here, and I look forward to this panel. Thank you.
Yoshita, we have lots of questions. So how did you get to be who you are now, this particular position?
Yeah. I've been a journalist for 2 decades now. I started my journey with Times of India in Lucknow. I used to do feature writing and education. I used to write for Lucknow Times and Education Times, and then I got through PTI. I joined them as a trainee in 2006 in Delhi. I used to cover the Commerce Ministry and the Finance Ministry there. And then I moved to the US in 2008. But how I became a journalist, I think it's the written word always inspired me. My father is also a journalist, so I think the genetic thing also played a role. But of course, I grew up seeing the impact of his work, and I was always inspired by what he did. But again, this was, I think, being a journalist was something I always sort of aspired to be. And then I joined PTI in Delhi, worked there for 2 years, moved to the US. And when I moved in 2008 in Chicago, you all would have known about the David Headley case, the one who was accused in the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. He was caught and arrested in Chicago. So I got to cover that criminal case of his, and that was a highlight for me because coming from a commerce background, from a business background, to be able to cover such a monumental case in Chicago, all the legal jargon, the legal terms. So I think what journalism teaches me and has taught me is that you learn every day. There's no one day is the same as the other. You continue to learn even after 20 years in the profession. I learned so much about my work and through my work. And then we moved to Boston. My husband and I, we moved to Boston for a year. I studied at Harvard there. I did a course in digital journalism. This was about 10 years ago. And then I was posted in New York as the UN correspondent. Again, a whole new field for me, a whole new sort of world for me to be covering the United Nations. And I've seen the sea change that India has, the sea change in India's role and contribution and stature in these 10, 15 years that I've been here, covering India's multilateral contributions, its bilateral relations as well. So clearly that has been my journey, and like I said, I've been learning every day, and here's to more learning through my work and through my job. Thank you.
Yes, yes, we do need one more mic. On to our illustrious next guest, and that is Dr. Soumya Vishwanathan. Soumya Vishwanathan is the Chief Physician Executive at Daycare Hospitals in Tampa, Florida. And she's the first Indian-American woman to occupy that title. And it's extremely prestigious. So, Soumya, are you going to tell us how many hospitals you handle with that job, right?
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if this is on. Can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I wanted to say a great big thank you to API for this invitation. Really superb group of physicians who have collected here. And I also wanted to say that I'm extremely honored to be part of this esteemed women's forum here. Especially we have somebody who we are going to be speaking about very shortly. I was just telling her how beautiful it is to have a group of people who have risen to the levels that she has, and really to look upon people like her to really empower women. So I'm super excited about today's forum. It's not just about women. I think it's people empowerment, right? But there is something about the leadership that empowers women to take on more and more and more responsibilities. So super excited about today's forum. I actually have been at BayCare Health System now as the Chief Physician Executive. I am an internal medicine physician, and I trained in Boston. I spent 33 years of my career in Boston. I want to say New England, because I started my career in Boston, in Massachusetts, and I was at all the academic health systems that you can think about. I was at UMass for 10 years. I was at the Harvard Medical School system with Partners Healthcare for a few years. And then I went to Dartmouth-Hitchcock, which is why I call it New England. Along the way, as I was doing clinical medicine, I had leadership opportunities that came my way, thanks to many of the mentors who believed in me. So I picked them up, and I went through a stage where I had to decide, do I want to continue with 100% clinical, or do I like leadership roles? So I did different things, like ran the clinical operations, ran a medical group, and then at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, I was the chief ACO officer. I was chief quality officer in one of the positions. So I liked all of this, and then decided to get an MBA, and then I did a master's in healthcare management at Harvard, which gave me that well-rounded feeling that, okay, I think I can take on a bigger leadership role. So that's what led me to BayCare Health System. I'm the executive vice president and chief physician executive there. We run 17 hospitals. We are the largest health system in West Central Florida. I know. So thank you for the fireworks. We are the largest health system in West Central Florida. We span all the way from Tampa, which is on the Gulf Coast of Florida, all the way to Orlando, east to west. And north to south, we are all the way up north in the Panhandle area near Tallahassee, and we have hospitals down almost touching Sarasota. We have about 300 plus clinics, 10 ambulatory surgery centers, 15 urgent care centers, freestanding emergency departments. So it's a really well-oiled, integrated health delivery system. We have our own health plan too. And covering about 5,000 physicians, 5,000 plus physicians who report up to me. The enterprise-wide expansion is now focused on the next generation of training young physicians. So we are bringing on academic GME programs and working on a relationship with academic institutions. Thanks, Bhavani.
Yeah. Yes, that deserves really a round of applause. Another one, please. Thank you. Soumya, are you the first Indian woman in that position in the country?
To lead a large health system as the first Indian woman who has come from India to establish herself, it is truly an honor to be in that position. I know there are other Indian women who have come from India and who have established themselves either in a chief medical officer role for, I want to say, in a hospital specific or even a bunch of hospitals. There is actually one other physician leader who has just recently become the CEO of a single hospital. But as far as the health system goes, I think I have been receiving these accolades now for a while. So hopefully I am still the first. If there is somebody else, I would love to know that person too.
Thank you. Walking a diplomatic tightrope, I'm sure. I'm going to ask Dr. Anjana Samadar to introduce Dr. Mamta Singhvi.
I would like to introduce Dr. Mamta Singhvi. Dr. Srinivasan already said a few words about her. She herself is a very accomplished physician and has been a president of the MSRF of API a while ago. So I would like to invite her to introduce our most distinguished speaker, Smriti Irani. So let's all give a round of applause for both of them. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I want to actually just return the favor. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I was just telling Dr. Samadar that she, of all people, I'm going to tear up, deserves to be on the panel as one of the most powerful, fiery woman that I have ever met, and I really think she deserves a standing ovation for all that she's been through. So now it's my absolute privilege, honor, and a true delight to introduce someone who really doesn't need an introduction. This was made obvious to me by the fact that we spent a mere 30 minutes together last night, and she was stopped multiple times by adoring fans who undoubtedly recognize and respect her for her contributions at large. To be a woman who has transitioned from entertainment to politics with such ease and grace, from an industry where she was beloved and at the top of her game, to an industry that is a little bit more harsh, a little bit more unforgiving, really speaks volumes to her commitment to service and her devotion to community, country, and to her fellow citizens. To be someone who has reached the pinnacle of two completely different sectors speaks to her dynamism, versatility, instinct, intellect, and mass appeal. Oh, and while doing all of that, she happened somehow to marry a doting husband and raise two successful children. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Mrs. Smriti Irani.
Namaste. I'm extremely glad to be on a platform which celebrates the potential of women and which seeks to be a trailblazing platform for more women to follow suit. But what gladdens my heart is that this congregation of men and women of API come together with the best of intentions. So I'm grateful, Mamta, for this lovely introduction that you have given. And just like the other ladies on the panel, I think that it would first be best if I give you a little insight into my journey thus far. In the year 2001, I served as the USAID WHO ambassador to India on the issue of diarrheal deaths of children under the age of 5. I had the distinct privilege of introducing to India, with the help of USAID WHO, something that is now popularly known as the ORS with zinc. In the year 2003, recognizing that through social service, I could possibly add to little solutions, but as a policy maker, I could probably set certain legislative agendas to a path that can help women and children achieve greater prospects, I entered politics. I was 27 in 2004 when I fought my first election. I've been the National Secretary of the Bharatiya Janata Party twice. I have been the National President of the Women's Wing. I have been a part of the National Executive of the BJP since Atal Bihari Vajpayee was Prime Minister. Though I'm 48, I've had 25 years of service in Indian politics. I've had the privilege of serving my country in the upper house, Rajya Sabha, since the year 2011, one of the youngest women ever. In fact, one of the youngest ever to be elected to the upper house. I've had the privilege of serving the glorious state of Gujarat twice as Member of Parliament from the Rajya Sabha. In 2014, I became the first woman to hold cabinet rank as Minister of Education. I've also served in the Ministry of Textiles as the first ever cabinet-ranked female to do so. I've served in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. I've also served as the first so-called non-minority in the Ministry of Minority Affairs. And I've also served as a Minister of Women and Child Development. In the year 2015, I've had the privilege of being pronounced by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. I have had the privilege last year of announcing at the WEF the Global Gender Alliance. I'm grateful that the Prime Minister, pushing the agenda of women-led development, institutionalized the female agenda at the G20 by ensuring that women and their needs and their contribution towards global good can find space in the Leaders' Declaration. That is something for every Indian to celebrate, because before India took presidency, the issues of women were always discussed on the sidelines and left to the civil society leaders. The fact that India mainstreamed issues of gender at the G20 is one of the greatest contributions we as men and women of India could have made to the G20 universe. Amongst the contributions that I've had the privilege of enunciating, what you now know as the new education policy, I had the privilege of drafting the base interface of it. The first ever MOOCs platform in India was brought to life when I had the privilege of serving in education, the first ranking for Indian institutions in higher education. As Minister Textiles, I had the privilege and the confidence of the Prime Minister of creating the PPE suits in India. In 3 months, we went from 0 companies in India that manufactured PPE kits, especially during the pandemic when international borders were shut down. And we, in just 3 months, as Indians, became the second largest exporters of that medical equipment to the world. As the Women and Child Development Minister, I'd had the privilege, under the guidance of the Prime Minister, of creating the largest digital platform to service the nutritional needs of pregnant and lactating mothers and children under the age of 6. That's a tracker called Poshan, which you all can have an interface with, reflect on the inputs, because it spans 1.4 million nutrition centers in the country with the help of 2.2 million workers on the ground. We have elaborate health systems and, as per WHO standards, the relative health measure of close to 75 million children under the age of 6 and 25 million pregnant and lactating mothers. Now, that being said, apart from a doting husband, I have a dadi who's a Maharashtrian, a nani who's a Bengali from Assam, a dada who's a Punjabi from partition Punjab, and a husband who's a Parsi from Gujarat. એટલે બધા ગુજરાતીઓને જય શ્રી કૃષ્ણ. বাঙালি এখানে যদি বসে আছে আপনি কেমন আছেন? মারাঠি আসতাত কা? কশা काय भाई? पंजाबियों सत श्री अकाल. I congratulate the RP leadership for bringing the issues of women to mainstream, particularly your own leadership, your contribution, and I think your struggles. What I've known of it through Mamta, it's stupendous that you're here today leading effortlessly, not letting anybody a peek into the kind of challenges that you've overcome. And I'm particularly glad to see a woman at the helm. Allow me for this panel and for everybody in the audience to contextualize a little about how women are faring in India. We have over 400 million women who are of working age in India, of which 343 million women are currently engaged in the informal sector. 43% of STEM graduates in India are women. The number of women doing PhD in India has gone up by 100%. Yes. 270 million bank accounts were opened by women across the country with the hope that they can, with their interactions with financial institutions, create better economic opportunities for themselves. 300 million loans were given out to women in the SME segment in India, and I'm very proud that the NPA was less than 2%. Women in India have made a financial case of how women across the world should be treated by financial institutions when they have a business plan. You would be concerned to know this, that across the world, there is a gap of $1.7 trillion with regards to women who own businesses, and especially SMEs and MSMEs. But today, there is enough research which showcases that if these women get the credit and we close the credit gap, incomes annually across all genders will go up by 12%. I'm hopeful that this platform at RP can not only help deliver the messages of empowerment and emancipation, but particularly tell the world that women are not waiting to be emancipated, that society and communities at large can be empowered when you ensure women have an equal place at the table. There are some who presume that women, especially from the global south, have a trouble speaking up. There are many in the global north who know that your geography does not change challenges. There are some challenges that are attuned to your gender. I am hoping on issues of gender and particularly health, RP can become that bridge between the global north and the global south. As an Indian woman, I've always said for women across the globe, women don't have a problem speaking up. They have trouble being heard. So I'm grateful that RP provides that platform so that now our voices are heard louder. I particularly celebrate, apart from the leadership's capacity, even women who lead in varied ecosystems, especially the story I heard from Soumya. I am particularly pleased when I heard her say that if there's more than me and other leaders like me around, let's find them and bring them center stage so that they can be celebrated. Celebrated so that many other young women, girls can all follow suit. But I'd like to particularly reach out to women in the audience who come with their male partners today, not as doctors, but as wives, as caregivers for their family. Many of you came to this country 2 or 3 decades ago with only hopes of having better prospects for your families. From this stage, I would also like to pay homage to you for your contribution. For the men and women in this room would be nothing without your support. What needs to be said from the platform of API is this: that a woman's value cannot be measured only by how successful she is or by which career she belongs to. She needs to be valued for who she is as a human being. That's what we do as Indians. We value our mothers as much as we value working women in our society. And I'm hopeful that API becomes that platform where every such voice is celebrated, irrespective of their economic or medical contribution to the community. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Gosh, that was uplifting, encouraging, educative, right? How about a round of applause for all our panelists? Distinguished women in various spheres and holding their own and walking these diplomatic tightropes. So I think now we are going to open it up to the audience. I know everybody would have a lot of questions, but yes, our president wants to say something.
I would like to introduce one last moderator out here, Dr. Leena Gupta from California, who is our regional director and who would like to say a couple of words. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to sharing this stage with Ms. Smriti Irani and my favorite, Dr. Anjana Samadar. As you all know, she has led our organization to the greatest heights, and I am truly inspired by her, as well as all the women panelists. Dr. Bhavani, thank you for having me over here. I wanted to let you know I'm from India. Came to this country as a student and did my residency, as everyone else did, internal medicine, and then went and did my neurocritical care fellowship from Mississippi. After that, I have embarked on a career which people say is very daring, but I have elected to continue practicing critical care medicine. The days when I'm stressed out, I have had plans to de-stress myself. I chose a hobby as writing poetries. I have just enjoyed writing poetries and de-stressing myself, working for API as an organization, have led this organization as wearing different caps, serving in the Global Health Summit, and being the chair of Publication Committee. I'm currently appointed as a Chief Medical Officer at Desert Oasis, as well as do some research at Kindred Hospital in San Francisco. Thank you very much for having me once again.
Thanks so much for that, Leena. We're going to open it up to the audience. I know you have tons of questions for our distinguished panelists. Leena, can I request you to walk around with that mic so that they can be heard? So you have a mic in your hand, right? Or you have a mic? Yes, okay. To the somebody who's asking the questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Suresh C. Gupta. I left India in 1966. I had a mother who was uneducated but gave us all values, and she sacrificed her life. We talk about women of today, but we should not forget the women of yesterday who raised 9 children amongst poverty, did everything that she could to raise her children to become engineers, go to best engineering college. 2 of them went to IIT. I went to AIMS, one became a lawyer. Then I have a wife in me, and we have been married for almost 55 years. She has raised 2 beautiful children, one chief of cardiology at AIMS, and another one MIT graduate, and I have 2 daughters-in-law. What I'm trying to say is, those women who have achieved something in life, in academic circles, we cannot forget about the women like my wife, others, who have achieved a lot and done a lot for the family and for the better society. So I think as much as we should appreciate them, we should appreciate the women who did what they did for us and raised us as a beautiful children. Thank you.
Thank you for that. May I request, in the interest of time, that we confine ourselves to the question, to whom it is addressed, and 30 seconds, if you don't mind. This way, we'll be able to cover a large audience. Thank you. Next question, and to whom it is addressed. And question only.
Hello.
Thank you. If the mic is coming around.
Hello, this is Harish Mehta, and this is question for Smriti Irani. So, your life cycle, I will be knowing a lot in last 25 years, whatever you have done. But what is the difference between your stardom and politics? Because we would like to know from Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi till today, what you have become, so that is the most important.
Yeah, please stand in the line.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions about me is that I oscillated from media to politics. When I speak about my role as the USAID ambassador to India in the year 2001, Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi was running simultaneously. When I fought my first election, I had 2 kids by the time I was 27, and I was also doing Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. So I was raising kids, doing Saas Bahu, and living a real Saas Bahu, and doing politics. I recognize that many a times actors come into politics when their careers fail. I happen to be one of those who left a successful career to come into politics, because I believe that when you leave success and come into a different direction, you tend to value your sacrifice even more. It's easier to walk away from failure. It's very difficult to walk away from success.
Well put, well put. That's true. Yes, that's a great idea. If you could just line up and then one by one we can send the mic around. Yes, go ahead, please.
So I'm Dr. Sapna Purawat. I'm from Indore. I'm a psychiatrist practicing in California. So we had a very good, program for mental health through Dori Foundation for Rajasthan. We were doing a lot of mental health work in Rajasthan during COVID times. So I feel like mental health is very kind of behind in India, especially for women, girls. And I would like to use our expertise here so we can train more Anganwadi workers or teachers or high school students. So I would like your input that how can we use our expertise there?
I think one of the biggest anomalies is that you presume that Indians are far behind when it comes to addressing issues of mental health. I believe if you look at the expansive contribution of NIMHANS, and particularly if you look at our contribution with regards to not only Anganwadi workers, but also workers who help aid children in distress, you will find that under a program called Samvad, we have successfully helped close to 150,000 healthcare workers, particularly in the women and child section of caregivers. We currently in our country have 7,000 registered institutional frameworks, networks, which help children who are in conflict with the law and children who are in need of protection of the law under the Juvenile Justice Act. All the caregivers in these facilities are connected to the NIMHANS program. Through the Anganwadi systems in collaboration with state governments, again, NIMHANS does an outreach through its counselors and runs a 24/7 helpline as well. But I think that your contribution will be equally valued if you find some space of collaboration with NIMHANS, not only in your district, but also your home state.
Thank you. I think Dr. Chandar Kapasi was next.
Thank you for saying that. I'm so pleased, believe me. I'm one person who is so pleased to see, because when API started, I've been there since inception. I was the first Board of Trustees chairperson in 93, 94, when it used to be men's club. API used to be the men's club, and in 93, 94 to become the first woman, Board of Trustees was a big thing. And I'm so happy that after that, so many followed. But the thing I started was that more women should come. And now to see this, it's such a pleasure. And I was very happy to see you yesterday and talk in the charitable foundation thing. And we would definitely, Dr. Ashok and Dr. Singhvi, and we all would like to carry on with that. And congratulations for that. And
thank you,
Soumya, we are there in Tampa. 6 months we spent there and 6 months in Boston. And it will be 50 years that I came to Boston to go to Howard School of Public Health. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
May I request everyone to confine yourselves to questions only. Only questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Dr. Pawan Ratan, and the question is for Soumya Viswanathan. Welcome to Tampa. I am from Tampa, and I have a very specific question. When I moved to Tampa in 1982, we felt the South vibes. I was one of those OBGYNs who were told, why don't you go back to India and do the tubal ligations when Indira Gandhi was there. I want to ask you, do you feel any racial vibes when you're representing such a South and a Catholic institution? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. It's interesting because I have in Tampa area, when I first went there, that was one of the things that I was asking myself. I want to embed myself in a society where there is diversity, where there is acceptance and tolerance to diversity and gender, leadership, women leadership. What was interesting is that my short period there in Tampa so far, I have not seen a single instance where any physician of Indian origin or any diverse cultural background has come up to me and said that I'm having a problem here because I am being biased against. Not heard it, not seen it. I personally am a believer that it could be something in us that's allowing us to accept those biases. If you do feel that somebody is targeting you or somebody is saying that I'm not going to do this for you because you're of Indian origin, we have to stand firm and stand up and say, tell me a good reason why. Why is it that just because I'm a woman leader of color, that am I going to be treated differently? And that has probably led me to really stand up against any adversity throughout my career. I have not heard it, and I hope it continues everywhere.
Thank you, Soumya. That was great. Next question only. Thank you.
Absolutely. Kamara Manula from Detroit. My question is for some of you, 2 or 3 of you, if you could answer briefly. Now that you all have accomplished so much illustrious career in your own area. What is your mentorship role for upcoming younger women for each of you? Say it briefly.
For you, mentorship for Indian women in India.
I have had the pleasure of also mentoring something called the Confederation of All India Traders, which is an amalgam of 40,000 trade unions in India across many trade verticals, from grain onwards to textile to medical equipment and electronics. So it's a gamut which has close to 80 million Indian small traders and SMEs. Our ambition in the next 5 years is to help close to 100,000 women-owned businesses to migrate from the status of SME, that to the smallest of the small businesses, to hopefully mid-sized companies. For that, there is a need to institutionalize certain interfaces or certain managerial abilities, which I am doing in collaboration with the National Skill Development Corporation. There is also a need to ensure that they understand global markets better and enhance their potential not only to serve the domestic market, but also see opportunities in export for their trade. Those are the basic focus areas that I am limiting myself to in terms of mentorship, because I believe that the growth of women-owned enterprises can not only financially add to betterment of communities, but women tend to spend more on issues of education and health for their families and the communities when their purses get strengthened. So with that perspective, I'm hopeful that these 100,000 businesses, which are owned particularly by women, spread across the country, can find strength.
Next.
I'm sorry. How am I mentoring? So it's interesting. When physician mentorship comes up, I tend to, of course, reach out to the GME programs and the medical students. I have always done mentor leaders in healthcare career. But I am engaged in another volunteer group, which is called Girls Inc., which is actually based, I'm doing the Tampa chapter. And my goal is that the Girls Inc. is basically for all girls, starting from teenage years, starting from 12 years and up, who really want to rise in their career and want to empower themselves to doing different things, different industries. So that's a group that I really big time cherish, and we have monthly discussions where we actually engage girls and we are empowering them to become their better self and give them, boost up the confidence. Many of them come from all walks of life. That's one. The other one that I really want to bring to people's attention, if you're not aware of this, there is a group called Women's Corporate Directors. I find that there are many women who establish themselves, they'll rise to the level of chief of medicine or chief of different divisions and departments. But really what I want to see is more women representation in corporate boards. The board of trustees, the board of directors. Big organizations are looking for more women representation. And I think it's our opportunity. We know how to do this. We know how to handle finance. I mean, I'm a doctor. I know I got an MBA. The MBA didn't teach me a whole lot. I actually learned about finance by talking to my children, both of them who have startups, and they taught me about how do you manage equity, how do you look for running a business. We can learn from every single individual we are interacting with. So the goal would be, if any of you are interested in something called Women Corporate Directorship and want to be on boards, please let me know, because I am running I'm co-chairing the chapter session, at least in Florida, but it's a national organization, and we're looking for more women on boards. So I am engaged in multiple activities like this, where I love to empower women to become their better selves.
Very inspiring.
Yeah,
yes. Can we have the next question?
Sure. Thank you, Appy, for making this happen immensely. This question is for Ms. Irani. I've seen a huge paradigm shift in India, the roles of women playing outside their homes, and it's fascinating and certainly thrilling. The biggest concern over my lifetime I've seen was female infanticides, which has been a big, big problem, particularly in the northern parts of the country. do you see some paradigm shift or some change in the psychological behavior of women? Because ultimately it's the women who are allowing this to happen, I feel. So do you see a change now versus then? Because I feel that empowerment starts with that at the grassroots level. So do you see a difference now and then?
What is fascinating is there's a presumption that female infanticide will possibly happen in geographies where education is a challenge for certain genders in certain communities, but that is not the case. It has been found that people who are extremely academically accomplished can also be inclined towards killing a girl child in the mother's womb, which is a startling research which has come out. The sex ratio at birth has bettered from 918 per 1,000 boys to now 938 per 1,000 boys. In certain communities, especially in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, in the southern district, the number of boys and girls match each other. In fact, in the southern district of Arunachal Pradesh, the girls outnumber the boys. So I believe that when communities come together, it is not only a matter of law, it's also an issue of community alertness and community outreach. And it is not an issue which is limited to the women's role in infanticide. The societal pressure that women have to succumb to is an issue that needs to be addressed on behalf of male members of the community. What also needs to be addressed is issues with regards to child marriage. We have to ensure that if you're looking at mortality rates for infants, where now in India the maternal mortality rate and the infant mortality rate, we have done much better in the last decade. I think that if you look at issues of child marriage and young women getting pregnant under the age of 18, those are issues that I think through counseling and especially under the leadership of the medical community can be addressed as well.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Bharat Gupta from Florida and originally from Rajasthan. Majority of the people sitting here are first generation physicians who practiced in India and now here as well. And I see that India being the largest democracy, there has been leaders, women leaders, president twice, that women presidents were there, and leaders like yours. On the other hand, we came to US, which is a leader of the world. In your opinion, Ms. Irani, what the reason that US is still hesitant to choose a woman president?
So you need to recognize that as somebody who used to just occupy a constitutional position a month ago, it would be extremely inappropriate for me to comment on domestic politics right now. I can only say this, as an Indian, I'm very proud that the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces in India today is a lady called President Draupadi Murmu. She is the first ever woman from an Adivasi community to lead that charge. We are also very, very celebratory about the issue that women in India today have a permanent commission in the Indian Armed Forces. And while if I look at how systems in the US play out, I can only say this, that even our space missions, particularly to the dark side of the moon, Chandrayaan-3, or the mission to study the sun, Aditya L1, or for that matter, MOM, which is the mission to Mars, was led ably by women project directors and female scientists at ISRO. So I can only say this, that when it comes to achievements of women, India is at the helm in terms of leadership potential to tell the world, the global community, that when women are in charge, good things get done.
This is for a domestic issue to the current president and the organizing team of API. We attended the CEO forum. There were about 10 CEOs. Not a single one was a woman. Can we now, at this time, make a pledge that if we are going to give a platform to the CEO forum, there should be a woman CEO, now and future. Thank you.
Last January, we met Air Marshal Chief Dr. Nair. So she's also one of the women in the higher up in the scale as well, right?
I think what is fascinating about how the gender issue is playing out in India is this, that across all walks of life, you have women in leadership roles. The fact that the female agenda has become the fulcrum of governance also speaks volumes. Otherwise, across continents, when you talk about governance, issues of women are just one more issue. What India has done is mainstream that issue, recognizing that if you want to build better communities, you need to ensure that women are at the center of it.
Hello. Yeah, I have a quick follow-up to what Ms. Irani said. I've covered UN peacekeeping for many years now, and this year at the UN peacekeeping, Major Radhika Sen of India was honored with the Military Gender Award. There are women formed police units as in peacekeeping missions across the world, and from the UN Secretary General to UN women officials, they've said the impact a woman peacekeeper has on the local communities. Because when a young girl or a woman in a conflict zone sees a woman in a uniform, commanding the role in UN peacekeeping missions, trying to bring about peace, that leaves such a lasting impact on young women who then want to also see themselves as, peacekeepers in a commanding role in a uniform. And a lot of women peacekeepers from India are playing that role in conflict zones, in hotspots around the world. They are really role models for the young girls and women in all these conflict zones. And I think that's, again, a tribute to the power of Indian women and the leadership roles they bring across the spectrum. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Yoshita. Yes, next question.
Namaskar, I am Shampa Chatterjee from Columbus, Ohio, and this question is for Honorable Ms. Smriti Irani ji. I know there has been a lot of glass ceilings that you had to break to get to the women-centered space mission. I would like your view from the back of the scenes, what has happened so that you were able to put women in the forefront for the space mission. Thank you.
Well, as space missions go, not everything about the mission is made public. But I can only say this, that when women at ISRO are ruling the helm, they're not doing that because of their gender. They're doing it because of their scientific temper. The fact that they have been doing it for decades and not recognized was the difference. The Prime Minister has brought them center stage, standing parallelly with male scientists. And I think that that has done well for young girls who want to gravitate towards STEM-based academics. I also believe that, like Soumya said, it is time now, especially with the space sector, which has opened up in India for business, it is time now to see more and more women owning space technology-based businesses. I also believe that with 43% STEM graduates in India, we had a gentleman here speak about his migration to the US in the 1960s. Now, I've been born in 76. Now, that has been a long history of many people coming here for better prospects. But today, if, as Soumya said, that she's trying to fill in more and more corporate boards with women, in India, in the startup system, we have 48,000 women as directors of boards. And more than that, it is mandated that if you're to be listed at the stock exchange, your company has had to have at least one female director on the board. But what is interesting is the number of women who once find a space in one board, then go on to serve on multiple boards. It's gone up by 22% as compared to 12% of men. That is a fascinating detail not many are privy to. So I think that when you celebrate female potential, especially in areas of science, I'm sure as women of medicine, you would agree that you would rather be known for your scientific temper, for your medical contribution than your gender. Your gender becomes that leverage which will help inspire future generations and leadership potential. But you are here because solely of your academic achievements and your medical achievements.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar. I'm Dr. Tapti Panda in New York, basically from the state of Odisha in India, which is not a very developed state yet. Having said that, I would like 2 questions addressed by the esteemed panelists. One is, being an obstetrician, gynecologist, and surgeon, and a woman, it is important to see how maternal benefits are different in both India and the US. I think India gives our mothers a lot more importance than what I have seen in the last 20 years in the United States of America. Maternal benefits are not really very prominently supported in this country, and I wonder why sometimes. So I would like one comment on that. Second is the gender pay gap. The gender pay gap is very obvious everywhere globally, especially here. I think Asia and India are a little bit better placed as far as the gender pay gap is concerned. So I would like the esteemed panelists, you all come from different professional backgrounds. Please comment on the maternal benefit differences and also the gender pay gap. Thank you so much.
So I can answer that on behalf of somebody who's been in media and politics both. In India, there is 26 weeks of maternity leave paid, mandated by law for every female professional and for every corporate organization, including unorganized segments. In India, we ensure that pregnant women get a dole, a cash transfer to their bank accounts, so that they can take day off for prenatal checkups, antenatal checkups as well, and get themselves vaccinated. So the loss of labor is covered by a cash transfer by the government. Till now, close to 30 million women have been covered under that program, which is called Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Apart from that, the Anganwadi systems ensure that lactating mothers have take-home ration, which supplements their daily nutritional intake apart from what they get from their family systems. Institutional delivery has gone up by close to 88%. What is fascinating is that in terms of maternity benefits, and somebody just contextualized it with what is happening in the US, in India, a bill which was pending since the 1960s, which was the medical termination of pregnancy at 24 weeks, was passed in both houses of parliament without a single man or political party opposing it. So that's on the maternity issue. As far as the pay gap, by law, equal pay for equal work has been now institutionalized. Companies have been under the labor reform and the labor commissioners across all states, all districts, being told that companies cannot willfully violate the law. But they are, like somebody like me who was in the media business. When I came into the business, I used to make 1,800 rupees. But when I left the business, I was the highest paid actor, irrespective of my gender. I beat the men in my group. But that's because I knew how to negotiate my contract. So I think that while law mandates equal pay for equal work, what we need to teach female professionals is how to realize a competitive contract. Many a times they are psychologically pushed into a corner to take a little less so that the nomenclature reads better at the door. But my belief is, and I'm somebody who came from, my first salary was 800 rupees, and I left as the highest paid actor. I think it's about having nerves of steel when you sit at the table and talk about your contract with management.
I think Kavita's question is going to be the last question. Okay, maybe 2. Our president says 2.
I'm an anesthesiologist, and thank you, Anjana, for a great convention. I have a question for Ms. Smriti Irani. I pursued anesthesia and graduated with Piyush Goyal. When he was here last time, I voiced my opinion about, being promoting fashion and textile. And my voice was not heard, but now that I'm disabled, I'm trying to look into how I can promote disabled women into fashion textile in US. So how can I be involved and be heard?
So I'll give you a fascinating story about a carpet vendor called Jaipur Rugs. He has close to 200 establishments across the US of A. And some of his most noteworthy and awarded carpets are woven by women who are not educated from the villages of Rajasthan. He does not give them a template or a design context or a framework. He just gives them the wool or the silk thread and the equipment, that's it. And they have woven through their own ancestry and the skill sets that they have inherited some of the most celebrated carpets in the world. So I think that your desire to help women in the crafts, your desire to help women, especially in textiles, and those who are disabled, who are faced with a disability, is something that I'm keen to partner with and support. Because if you just look at the export potential of handicrafts, and I'm not talking handlooms in India, the yearly potential financially of handicraft exports out of India is worth more than 1 lakh crore rupees. That's a huge industry. And if you can help women, and especially those with disability in it, especially for the US market, I think it's a win-win both for your cause and for women back home.
Go ahead, Kavita.
Good afternoon. My name is Kavita Gupta. I was the past YPS Young Physicians Section President and the incoming Board of Trustees of this organization, API. We thank you so much for taking our invitation to be with us today. My question for you, Honorable Ms. Irani, is that I echo your comments that women oftentimes do not get the adequate representation or also the chance to speak and also to lead in organizations. You, along with our current president, Anjana, are one rare example of people who can do such a job and take this on, collectively. My question to you, what is the wisdom and what inspiring advice can you give to young women, young girls? We have medical students, we have young physicians, for those who want to lead and come and represent and have their voices be heard at the same time.
I think the leader of API can speak for herself, but as far as women and leadership goes, as an Indian woman, I'm very proud that when we entered the new building of the new parliament, one of the first legislations that was passed in both houses of parliament was a 33% reservation for women in the Indian parliament. So now we have close to 1.5 million women who are successfully serving as grassroots politicians in our panchayats. We will now, in the year 2029, see 1/3 of parliament come to life with female leadership. But as women, I always say this, and I've said this recently in a forum for investors in England, that there's a beautiful quote that women are supposed to look like girls, behave like ladies, work like a horse, and think like a man. So if you're one of those women who potentially now can't look like a girl, who's trying her best to behave like a lady, who thinks like a man and works like a horse, all I'll say is kick away. Yeah. Kick away and make a space for yourself. And here's to greener pastures together.
Okay, we'll go quick. Next question.
Hi, Darshana Ben. Kem cho?
Hi. Saru che. I'm Darshana Patel. I'm the chairwoman for Choice Hotels Owners Council. And one thing, I have 2 questions to ask you. One is human trafficking. The other one is women's health. So having a nursing background and being a physician's wife and a hotelier, I would like to know how organizations can help India in any way for improving women's health, for preventive medicine, and also stopping human trafficking.
I think that this is an invite or a suggestion that I have for the API leadership. If you so desire, I'm more than happy to create a digital platform where API can come together with well-meaning civil society leaders and people who represent the government, so that you, when you go back home, can not only contribute through lecturing or giving your presence in local medical associations, so that you can help bridge the knowledge gap, or for that matter, the knowledge experience with your fellow colleagues in India. There are close to 160,000 health and wellness centers in the country where you can contribute. Through the Ayushman Bharat program in India currently, 31 crore Indians, 310 million Indians have now a digital health identity as well. We've had under the government program close to 550 million tests done already on issues of hypertension, diabetes, on issues of women's health. We've had between numbers for cervical cancer and breast cancer, close to 240 million tests done for women, especially in rural India and semi-urban India and the poorest of the poor communities. So I think given this expanse of experience and contribution by the government, both at the center and the states, that is a very, very productive, I think, engagement opportunity for doctors at API. I'm happy to provide that bridge.
Hi, moving forward, rapid fire questioning. Okay, we promise you. We promise. You worked very hard.
Oh, you want to do a rapid fire?
No, I'm going to be very quick. So domestic violence is a taboo subject, very much in the United States and throughout the world. We have unfortunately labeled many times India as having a very high rate of domestic violence. But
you have to be very clear, ma'am, in your enunciation.
Domestic violence.
Okay.
Okay. Basically, I'm just asking for an update. Any organization you recommend that we liaison with in India?
May I just mention, after Dr. Mamta Shaha, we'll stop with the questions. Last question is Dr. Mamta Shaha.
Issues of crime fall under the state jurisdiction, but in terms of legislation and policy, it is done at the central level. In terms of domestic violence, we have in India close to 35 helplines dedicated only to women across all states, which have processed close to 220 million calls already. Each individual call is digitized. Each individual lady is reached out to by counselors, by the police, medical community, and the legal community. Across every district in India, we have a one-stop center for women who are victims of violence, so that they can find short-stay homes and they can find legal aid, which is free, medical aid, which is free, and counseling, which is free. We also have women homes across every district of every state, so that destitute women can find shelter as well. And I think that in the past decade, we have seen close to 40 million homes being built for the poor in the country, of which 50% of the ownership is by women singularly, and the rest of the 50% is jointly owned between the man and the woman in the family. So there is enough global research which showcases that when women start owning capital assets, physical assets, propensity of them being victims of violence decreases.
One last
Namaskar,
question.
Smriti ji. I am Saket Sinha. I am from Jharkhand. I run a SAFE chair organization, which is SAFE Coalition of Human Rights. I'm one of the board of directors. The question is about human trafficking from Jharkhand, Orissa, West Bengal. We are not able to get a good contact where we can work with the public part. We are the private part. We are trying to create a safe village for these women that have been trafficked. Typically from the east, they get to the Delhi area and then surroundings, and then they get sold out for labor or various things. So I need concrete information on where do we go.
So, firstly, I've had the privilege of setting up the anti-human trafficking unit in every district of the country. You have two numbers that you can immediately have called somebody, whoever is in India who's in need of help. 1098 if the victim is below the age of 18. And if the victim is above the age of 18, you dial 181. You also can digitally reach out to the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights if it's an individual citizen below the age of 18, and the National Commission for Women if it is an individual victim above the age of 18. And if there are state-specific numbers, that is already available on the state websites.
Everyone, please, if you can sit down or please keep quiet because Ms. Irani is trying to speak. We would request everyone to be quiet. I know a lot of us have a lot of questions, but because of constraint of time, we cannot have any further questions right now. We will request Mrs. Irani to come and speak to us as a keynote speaker later tomorrow, and hopefully she'll accept the invitation. So now I would like to thank Dr. Soumya Viswanathan, Ruchita Singh, and Mrs. Irani for coming here and being a part of this Women's Forum. We are honored to have them here today because they are very busy in their prospective fields, but they took the time out to come and be here. So thank you everyone, and thank you to our moderators, Leena Gupta, Bhavani Srinivasan, Mamta Singhvi. So I would like to ask Mrs. Irani to come and accept the shawl on behalf of API.
Just wanted to present a bag to Dr. Soumya Viswanathan. Thank you so much. It's a tiny, tiny gesture of our appreciation.
I am so honored and so blessed to be part of this forum. Really, really thankful to all the questions. Like I said, if anyone has any interest in any kind of women leadership role or leadership role in general in healthcare, please reach out to me. Happy to engage.
Thank you. Mrs. Yoshita Singh, this is a tiny token of our gratitude. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And just as a parting shot, I just want to say, it takes both men and women to support each other. If I'm here, it's because of the support of my parents and my husband. And I think it's equal partnership. It's no longer about man, wife. It's about equal partnership, supporting each other in each other's dreams. And that's how we can all accomplish what we aspire for. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you again. I want to thank all of our distinguished panelists, and I want to thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. You've been a wonderful audience. Very appreciative. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just 1 second. There was a young lady physician. 3 days ago, she asked me, is Smriti Irani ji coming? I said yes. She said, I would like to be photographed with her. And I told her she's a politician. They don't care who takes the photograph with them. She said, do you know her? I said, what do you mean? She said, she's my idol. You don't know how much work she has done. If that lady is here in the house, Or if she's not, please let the registration desk know. And we'll make sure that you. Oh, that's here. Please come on this. Smriti ji. This young lady thinks you are her idol. Remember the story I told you yesterday? Please come on this stage. She said she is coming up. So I didn't make that story when I told you yesterday. That was a fact. Please come on this stage. Please allow her to come on this stage. Yeah. She's a young physician. She said, Smriti is my idol.